from what I read on your blog on your website, you blurb. So, first of all, Fernanda, thank you so much for making the time. It's so awesome to reconnect with you because I feel like it's been forever.
Yeah, like 2 years.
Yeah, really, right? Yeah, but it does feel like it feels longer than 2 years. But yeah, 2 years, absolutely. So, like, first of all, if you could introduce yourself. Obviously, you and I met in Argentina, but you're Chilean. And from what I read on your blog on your website, you blurb on your website, you said you've been a storyteller since the age of 13.
Yeah, I'm Fernanda, I'm from Chile, and I'm an animation director and illustrator, and I also make comics. I've been mostly self-taught. I started animating when I was 13 with tutorials, books, and then, well, not completely self-taught. Then I went into animation mentor
Yes.
because I thought, well, I want to be an animator. I can't access to the schools abroad, so the only way I can get an international education is through animation mentor. So, but then I finished the course and I learned how to animate, how to be a character animator. But when I finished it, it was like, oh, I really like animating, but what I really enjoy is telling stories. It's inventing my own stories. So it was like I will try to go and be a director.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, which you did an incredibly good job at. But before we go there, I think so. The animation mentor scheme, was that linked somehow to Les Gobelins as well? Because I noticed you did a summer school at Les Gobelins. Was that right, in Paris?
Oh yeah. No, that was after I finished animation mentor. I was like, oh, I want to. Gobelin always was like my dream school, and they had an international program, like international students could go in there for the third year. Like this was before like the whole international program. So I was like, oh, I want to go and see how is it, like if I like it, to see if I can like I can try and do that shot of trying to get accepted into it. But there was this summer school, and there were also like government scholarships from Chile, and I was like, oh, I can apply to this summer school with the Chilean government grant scholarship. So I did that. I won the scholarship, and I was able to pay to go to this 3-week summer school in Gobelins, which was like only international students. They took you in. You made some animation exercise. You had teachers from Gobelins, and yeah, and so it was like a bite size of the experience of the school. So it was like it was also very specialized. It was like here you are an animator or a character designer or and I think I'll always be like multi specialized. I'm not sure if this is for me. So after I went to Gobelins, for me it was finally like, oh, I got to experience it. Like
totally.
I feel okay with that, and I was like, I'm going to try to be a director. So when I went back from that experience, I started applying for grants of the Chilean government, and that's when I won the grant to make Here's the Plan.
That's a great segue. So let's talk about your short film, Here's the Plan, because the first time I met you was at Ventana Sur, and you were presenting an independent series project. But I remember at the beginning of your presentation, this really struck me. You forgot to mention Here's the Plan.
I forgot?
Yeah, you didn't mention it. Like I remember one of my comments was, first of all, it demonstrates that you're not someone who's overselling herself, and you're not someone like you're someone that's quite humble, but also you're someone that's incredibly driven, right? To have taken a film there. So I feel like we're jumping ahead a little bit, but for me, I was like, wow, this is an incredible film, and somehow this is not leading this kind of conversation to establish awareness that you are this incredibly productive and talented writer director.
Yeah, and you probably told me that because after Ventana Sur, like every pitch had my slide of, I did Here's a Plan. Like it had like 1 million views at the time. Like it was
Right?
belonging for the Oscars. Like, so
Yeah. For me, that was huge. Like when I saw the film online, I was like, oh my God, this is so good. Like it's a tearjerker.
Okay, so here's the plan. We plan our wedding, which will be very simple, except for
the cake.
the best cake. We keep living happily together. We keep baking and baking and baking. It would always be the two of us, making cupcakes. Wouldn't it be nice?
You're nice. Honey? Do you think we can do it?
Together? Of course.
Like it's so wonderful. So anyway, so you got the grant and you're like, okay, I'm going to make my own film. What did you have to produce to get the grant? Did you have to have a script? Did you have to have like a board, like some artwork? What did you make to get the grant?
So it was like I had the script. I think I had an animatic, but it was like awful. It was I made it myself like in a month.
Right.
I didn't storyboard too well, so it was very like rough. But mostly, like I think the thing that sold it was like a little proof of concept video. So the funny thing is that I hate CG animation. Like I hate doing it. Like I'm very bad at modeling, at lighting, at the only things I know how to do in CG are animating, texturing, layout. Yeah, that's it. That's what I'm good at, and that's what I do. So, but I had won a scholarship to be in a CG school in Chile, and I like my final exam was to make the models for Here's the Plan. I was like, okay, I'm using the experience to make like this proof of concept for this short film I want to make. So I made the modeling, I made the rigs, I textured them, and they're very ugly looking compared to what eventually came out of it, but it was enough. Like it was cat and dog, the protagonist, like just a walk cycle and like a little animation test of them like hugging and looking at each other, because if you move them a little more than what they're doing, the rig will broke, because I don't know how to read. But it was enough, and a lot of concept art, character sketches, like the location sketches that I made, and also so I put all of that like in a very like with a very emotional music, and I had the help from Punk Robot, which was the company. They hadn't won the Oscar yet, but they helped me. They did the lighting, and so it looked very beautiful. And with that, I think we solved it.
Yeah, and then you went into production, right? So you got the grant and you went into production. Did they help you build a team, or did you bring in friends or like people you worked with before, or how did you build a team?
So the partnership with them was for them to be I went into their office, and their CG team was working with me. So they made the modeling, they made the models from scratch. They made the whole scenarios, the sets. But the animators were they were my friends or people that I found. And also, like, we built a team. We had a lot of interns. Since it wasn't too much money, we got a lot of people that were just starting into the industry. And it was great because they were very passionate about the story, and they learned a lot. It seems like they seem to remember the experience with with nicely.
Fondness, yeah, like fondness, yes.
Yeah.
I totally get that. Yeah, it's always a bit scary if you're working on something that's asking a lot of people, like, are they actually getting something positive out of it or not? So it's a bit scary.
No, because it was very tough, because nobody really had, like, everyone was very talented, but nobody had really worked with this kind of stylized CG before. So it wasn't like, for example, I had a little team working on the textures, and it wasn't like, oh yeah, this is metal, this is wood, we'll just get a photo and paste it. No, it was like, so we're following like a certain painterly style. These are the brushes. This is like the aesthetic direction, or like even when with the modeling of the characters, like the eyes were like a little bit weird. They were like flat. So when they tried to rig it like a normal CG character, let's say DreamWorks, it's like the eyeball, and it's like
it's like real volume, right? Yeah, totally.
So these were like that, and we had like little problems, like, oh, but then how do we rig a flat eye? I don't know. So very very little things that were like, how are we going to, like, it seems easy, it will seem easier than to make photorealism, but
it's not.
But it's not, because nobody had done it before. So it was a lot of learning process, but it worked in the end.
Yeah, totally. It totally worked. And the film itself is a real testament to first of all you as a director, and also obviously the teamwork to make it like come together. There's a choice that I think everyone has to make. It's like, either you're going to slot into a very specific role in a production and excel, like become excellent at that craft or that one specific thing, or, as you said earlier, you're going to be like diverse and have a diverse set of skills and remain curious about learning as much as you can to be a storyteller, right? And it seems like you chose the second option.
Yeah, it was tough to make that choice of not choosing, like, because I did have that problem with, like, oh, I want to specialize in character animation, like I should be just like a character animator, but I wasn't really that good animating,
right.
so
yeah, I know how that feels.
Like, it wasn't like I'm not that good, like I'm not that industry standard in any of these specialized industries. So it was like, I'm going to go and try to, like, I'm going to take advantage that the Chilean system doesn't has specialized workers, and I will just like try to make something here, like, because one of the things I noticed, like, after traveling abroad, because when I was growing up here in Chile, I always thought, like, oh, Chile is awful, like there's nothing to do here, like it's such a small country, like there's no quality productions, nobody knows what they're doing, like, oh, I hate it here, like I was very like bitter and angry. But then when I graduated Animator Mentor, I was able to go to the US for my graduation, I guess.
Right. Yeah.
And started looking at this American system. And then when I went to Gobelins, I also went to Annecy for the first time.
Right. Yeah.
And I was able to see a little bit of the European system. And what it struck me was that it's very difficult to make your own stuff in those systems. Like it's almost impossible, or you need to be like, I was an animator for 10 years, 20 years, and then I got a shot to direct or something like that. And I was like, oh, I don't want to wait 20 years. So I was able, after having that perspective open to me, I was able to see what was positive in Chile. It was like, we have government grants. They're small, but since the industry is not like full of rock stars, like I do have a shot of winning one of those.
Yes.
So like there's an opportunity, since there's not much of anything, like there's the opportunity to be one of the first to do something. So
yeah, it's like that whole thing of like, I can choose autonomy and freedom of like, you know, creative voice, but with limited resources, or I can have comfort and a lot of resources, but a very narrow channel to express myself. It's going to be a very narrow channel. Yeah, exactly. And I feel like that's I went through a very similar journey, to be honest. Like when I started, my whole goal was to become a feature animator. And I remember when I was sitting in the studio in London, and we were prepping for Sinbad, the animated, like 2D animated feature. And I was sitting with two other animators, and we were considered juniors. Like I'd been animating for, I don't know how long, like, you know, I guess it wasn't that long. It must have been like 6 years, 7 years. But I've done a lot of very high-end commercials, worked with a lot of feature animators on commercials, and done some like long-format pilot stuff as well. And so Christophe Saran at the time, I'm sure Christophe's never going to watch this video, but hello, Christophe, if you're watching. So Christophe Saran was there prepping the new sort of satellite team from the UK. And first of all, no one was allowed to mention the satellite team. Like we were the invisible team. So anyway, we started working, and so I got the scene from El Dorado, and it was like, okay, animate this shot. You know, obviously I'd seen the film, but I didn't have a storyboard. I didn't have the scene before. I didn't have the scene after. So I figured, you know, we're juniors. I'd worked with a lot of junior animators from DreamWorks, and you were pretty much doing like vacuuming horses, eating grass in the background and sit in spirit, or you're doing really crappy things like crowd breathing, like breathing cycles with like 600 drawings of the cycle of breathing, you know, like really awful like things, right? So I was like, okay, well, that's what we're gonna have to do. So I guess this guy, because I figured that's kind of how the system worked. And then, so I was like, okay, I guess he wants to see if I can rotate this head, because it was like a close-up shot. Can I rotate the head, and can I do it? So I did it. And then I got comments back like the acting was too broad. I was like, okay, so bring the acting down. 15 takes later.
Wow.
I was like, well, maybe you should have given me the storyboard and the hookup before. And, you know, are you just trying to psychologically mess with me, or is this like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
So I spoke to the other two animators, and they were like, you know, it's always like this, and you know, that's what they do to you, you know, when you come here for. And I just said, well, to be honest, I can earn more money animating Tony the Tiger, and I don't have to take this shit. You know, I don't understand. Like, this doesn't make any sense. And so that's when I realized that I just wasn't cut out for it, and I didn't have the personality type for it. I wasn't cut out for it, and it was a big learning curve. Like I had to just accept that this dream I had was just actually not right. It wasn't the thing I wanted to do. I wanted to tell stories. I wanted to be a director. I wanted to do other things. So it sounded like you had a similar journey.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that sounds like I wonder, probably because you were like the B team.
Yeah.
That was it. But yeah, like sometimes you get like that kind of experience, like one of the first experiences, and it's like, I'm not sure if I'm cut out to keep enduring this until it gets better. Like it's not.
I just couldn't live with the nonsensical, like, because in that group of people that were in that studio, there was Alberto Miago. There was a guy named Nelson, who I can't remember his last name, who was actually a Brazilian animator. We all worked together on Gorillas after that. Alberto went on to be very well known. I remember he was not writing timing charts like everybody else. So when the cleanup artist got his animation, they couldn't clean it up. And so they would just say, like, it wouldn't work when they would shoot the line test, it wouldn't work. So so they all said that was Alberto's fault. But when he came to work with me on a commercial, I realized it was the timing charts that were different. So if you actually took some time to understand his way of writing timing charts, you could make it work, right? Yeah. But you had to stop and change what you were doing, listen to him. So that was the thing. I was like, no one's listening to anybody. It's crazy.
Yeah, like sometimes, like I guess when you work in like self build industries, like probably Spain a few years ago, or like Chile now, it's like you learn to be very flexible and very like resourceful, because it's like that's not going to work for us. For example, I don't know, like for Here's the Plan, there was, so the lighting and the colors were very like specific. Like every shot, every scene had a very like specific lighting direction, and I was also like the art director, so I had to like establish that for the lighter. But probably in a big production, it will have been like I will have to like illustrate concept art, like beautiful concept art, to show like this is the lighting of the scene, or this is the colors of this for the post production. But since we didn't have time, I will just like take a screenshot of the Maya play blast when the characters are all gray and ugly.
Yeah.
And I will get it into Photoshop, and I will just like do a very rough like pass on it, like, okay, this is it. So it will take me 5 seconds to do that concept art, and it's very ugly, and it's not like to be in an art book, but it was what we had at the time. So that kind of solutions, like, this is not the pretty thing, this is not the artistically like impressive thing, but it's what works within your budget. So we have to kind of come up with a lot of that kind of solutions.
I actually have stopped design meetings sometimes. I'm like, we're not designing for your Tumblr or your Instagram. Like, can you design for the project, please? Like, do what we need, not what looks good on an Instagram.
Yeah, because sometimes it just has to be functional. Like, yeah.
I totally agree. So sorry, I'm getting us off topic now. It's totally my fault. But back to like, okay, so you've made Here's the Plan. It's doing well. It's gaining momentum. And did you wait to start working on something else, or did you have other projects in the background?
So in the final months of producing Here's the Plan, like, well, you have to understand that the short film took over my life for 2 years. Like,
I totally understand that.
There was nothing else. Like, I was really like working on it like every day, all day, and because at the end of the process, we ran out of money. So Glenn, my husband, and I had to do all the compositing, like 300 shots. Like,
oh my God.
So because we didn't have money to pay anyone else, so it was just the two of us doing that. But anyway, like when work started, when it finally the amount of work started to die down, I was like, I'm going to finish this film and nobody's going to see it because I don't know how to distribute.
Right. Yeah, totally.
So I started learning how to distribute films while I was when I was finishing it. And
oh my God.
There was like a blog called like Short Film Secrets or something like that, like Festival Secrets or something like that. It was about the whole festival submission process and stuff like that. And I remember reading an article that said like, things I wish I had known after I finished my first short film. And one of the advice was that know what's your next project, like have it already, because you probably are not going to make any money or not going to have like any opportunities based on the short film itself, because very few short films become feature films. It's not like I can like, oh, I will make the feature film of the short film.
Yeah.
So it was like, make a new project. And so people, if you get to go to the festivals and you get to go to the markets, people are going to ask you like, what's your next project? And you have to be able to
have something
to
say.
answer. And I was like, I don't have any project because my brain is all
it's all mush. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I didn't follow that advice until I finished the short film, and I was like, I'm never creating anything again. Like I can't see a future where I do this again. I can't. Like my brain is completely burned out. I'm not creative anymore. I don't have. This is it. My career is over. I hope this short film does well, but after 2 months, like I started getting ideas again. Like, oh yeah, I really have to be able to take advantage of the momentum of the project. So one day I was like, you know what? I want to make a series. And I told Glenn, like remember when we saw like the Olympics, like the 2016 Olympics, and I was like, why there's not an anime about the Olympics? Like we should do an anime about the Olympics. So we, and I was also like doing CrossFit, so I really like weightlifting, and I was like, it would be cool to have like a series about weightlifting.
Yeah.
So that's how Raise the Bar was born in terms of. So it was very like I remember Pixelado, the Ideatoon Bootcamp, which is a competition in Mexico, like Ventana Sur. It was enough to make some concept art and start working on the project. So little by little, we started. It was almost like a joke, not a joke, but it was like, this project is never going to happen because it's like an anime, it's serialized, it's for older teens, it's everything the market doesn't want.
Yeah.
So it was like, well, let's have fun with it. Like, let's just keep going with it without thinking if it's going to happen or not. And that was very good because meanwhile, I was submitting Here's the Plan to festivals, and I was getting rejected on all of them.
Really?
Yeah, because like I sent like the first 20 submissions, like I only got one acceptance email after 20 submissions. So I got 20 rejection emails before. So every day I will wake up and I will get new rejection emails.
I can't imagine that. Honestly, that really shocks me because like seeing the finished film, like I discovered it when there was like talk on it, it was featured on I think Katsuka, and I saw it on different things around the world, and I was like, wow, like and you tell yourself the story that, you know, Fernanda made this film and it went straight line straight to like festival success and people love it, and there's like all this kind of like, you know, adulation around the film. I can't imagine anyone refusing it for a festival because it just seems so strong. It's like such a strong film.
Yeah, well, thank you. But also, it was 90 minutes, so.
Sure, but it's,
and it was difficult to program. And I think that was, I understood that. Like, it's not like, it wasn't like, I knew that was a risk. Like, it's not like I was like, oh no, like, it's too long. Who would have knew?
Yeah,
it was
exactly.
like, I knew it was either cutting it down and having a version of it that I didn't like, or it was worth taking the risk of it getting rejected in festivals and doing what I wanted to do.
Right.
So in the end, I think it was better because since all the like failure of Here's the Plan, I was able to be like, okay, I can't put all my eggs in this one basket. I have to try to do more things. And like, I had this fantasy of, because I have seen it happen with Bear Story. By then they had already won the Oscar. So I was seeing them like winning festivals, getting invited to festivals, traveling, all of that. And I was like, okay, that's going to be my path too. Like, I'm going to get invited to festivals, I'm going to win awards. But when I started seeing that it didn't happen, it was like, okay, so that's not going to be my story. If I want to get something out of this, I have to look for it myself.
Yeah.
So I didn't get invited anywhere back then. Like after some years, like I did get invited to places and everything. But at that moment, I didn't. So I was like, okay, so I'm going to apply to pitch contests. I'm going to apply to government grants to go to markets. So I wasn't going to those festivals invited, but I was able to go to those festivals by my own, like, okay, I'm going to go and sell Here's the Plan and Raise a Bar and other projects. So I was able to get into those spaces, not by being invited to them, but by being like, okay, I'm inviting myself in to those spaces.
Okay, so there's so much to unpack there, but like where do you get the drive to keep pushing? Because you are so inspiring to me. Like you have so much drive to keep pushing.
That's the mystery, I think. Like I don't know, but also back then it was like so Here's the Plan was such an effort from everyone involved, not just me, but all of my team. Like they all put so much of themselves in it, and I thought like if no one is going to see this, it's all going to waste. So I really have to do everything to make people see it. And back then, a big drive for me was that I discovered the work of the director Ava DuVernay.
Yeah.
And now she's like this powerhouse. She made Selma. She made When They See Us. She built her empire in Hollywood. But back then, I saw a speech by her that said that her first two films she distributed them herself.
Right.
And that she also was like she was a PR before being a film director. So she knew how to market films. She knew how to move them around, and it was like she will always say like there's no, like she will always say like something like they will never open the doors for people like us, so we have to build our own doors, our own houses. So for me that was like, okay, that's great. That's a kind of philosophy I can go behind, because in Hollywood it's like, oh yeah, they discovered me, like, oh success story, they asked me to be director for this film or whatever. But I knew that wasn't going to happen for me, and when I finally saw a role model that was able to do that for herself, it was like, okay, I'm just going to like read every interview about Ava. I'm going to listen to her speeches like every other week to inspire myself. And it was like, okay, if I have to just believe that if I try to go, I have to just believe that if I keep going down this path, at some point it's going to pay off. Like
amazing.
And it did. It was very slow, but it did.
Yes, it certainly did, and it certainly did. And I think that yeah, it's a real credit to your tenacity and your passion, your commitment to making things happen, and you know, again, your ability to keep picking yourself up when suddenly you have to fit into a system, or if you pulled into like whether it's a European system or a North American system or even a Chilean system, if it's a funding system, like if someone's saying, oh, we'll give you the money, but you have to do this, like how do you deal with that?
Well, it definitely takes a toll on your energy, I guess.
Yeah.
I did after all of this of distributing Here's the Plan and everything, I did get burnout. Like
sure.
My brain was like absolutely like the distributing of the film was the last stretch, and then I definitely was like running on fumes.
Yeah.
So that's a downside. Like you get so much drive and you get exhausted. But also I have run into some difficulties in terms that sometimes that passion and that drive can be seen as stubbornness and like combativeness, and it's not my intention, because I do have a vision as a director, like not with everything, not with every project, but with if I'm very close to a project, if a project is very personal, I will definitely fight for that vision.
Right.
And I know I have learned through the years, like I thought for a moment like, oh, maybe I'm too like I'm too rigid, I'm not flexible enough, like, but I am flexible with other projects. Like when I don't have a very set vision, it's like I don't know, like what should we do, and I rely more on Glenn or other teams or more writers. But sometimes it's like, this is my vision, like can you help me do it better? Like this is what I want to achieve, like how can we achieve it, or like ask questions like, am I achieving it, like, and if the answer is no, then rework it.
Because I remember when you first pitched your series concept, Raise the Bar, I remember giving you very direct criticism where I said to you, it's not a series. It feels like it's like a film, like a long film, but it doesn't feel like a series. And the way that you've presented it, it should be restructured, right? It doesn't feel like a series. And also that's when I mentioned that you didn't bring up the short film. Like you didn't mention that you had established awareness, and you weren't nobody, you were somebody, and you didn't even mention it. But what struck me about that was that you went away. It just absolutely blew my mind, and I maybe wouldn't have said so much if I knew you would do this. But like the very next day we came back, because that was just the first sort of rehearsal. The next day we came back where you pitched the project and you redid it all.
Yeah.
But that was incredible. I was like, that's not rigidity. But that's not rigidity. That's someone who's listening for useful criticism, taking what she thinks is useful, and then using it in her project.
Yeah, because it was like, oh, so they think it's a film. My thought process is not like, okay, then I'll make it a film. It's like, okay, so I'm not being successful at communicating that this is a series. So I'm going to try to do that better, to try to convince them that it's a series. So
and I think, you did a fantastic job of that, by the way. And it must have been a huge amount of work.
Yeah, but it wasn't like reading everything. It was just like reading the way it was presented.
But it was just, for me, it was interesting to see that that you were able to do that. And so, yeah, I don't feel like you're someone who's rigid, but I hear what you're saying about like when you're used to doing everything yourself, and then suddenly it's like, okay, they're asking me just to do this, or how do I fit into a system? Because I feel like my experience with feature animation was the same problem. And I actually got taught on an independent feature by a very like amazing feature animator named Gabriele Zucchelli. He taught me a very valuable lesson, and it was about discipline. And And that's something I wasn't learning otherwise. I felt like I was just being bullied and no one was listening to me. But what I wasn't hearing was I lacked discipline. And then Gabriele just showed it to me. He didn't bully me, he just demonstrated by sitting next to me and coming into the studio and doing so much work every day between these specific hours and just being so very, very good at what he's doing. And so I feel like that was my big lesson I had to learn. And so is there a lesson for you, do you think, in all of this where you're like, okay, well, you say that you feel like maybe you're a bit rigid or you feel like it comes off as being combative. But is there a lesson in there somewhere that you feel like you could like, I think we're all evolving as people, right? And certainly as creatives. So is there something that you feel like there's something you need to dig into, or something you feel like is you could pass on to other people that are in the similar position that they might learn from you?
I mean, well, there's two things. Like, it's difficult. Like, sometimes it's difficult to be able to what's the word? Sorry.
No, I just want to say thank you so much for doing this in English, by the way. I really appreciate it.
Oh yeah, thank you. No, it's not. I just sometimes forget words, and I haven't been talking English here because so yeah, I'm a little rusty. But so sometimes it's difficult to being able to recognize if something is happening to you because you are lacking in something, or because also systemic oppression, sexism, xenophobia, like not racism because I'm white, but I am Latino.
Yeah, like xenophobia if someone is a foreign, fear of foreigners, or fear of the other, essentially, right? Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So I think that it's difficult to know, like, oh, is it me that I'm lacking some skills, or is it like it doesn't matter what I do, I will still be seen as what I'm doing is wrong, because they're not used to something like someone like me doing certain things or reacting to certain ways. So it's difficult because I always I am self-critical, so I do always think it's me. But then I saw recently, like trying to understand like these systems. I recently saw this old reality show called Project Greenlight.
Okay,
I've heard of that. I don't know if you've seen it.
I have heard of that.
Yeah, so it's a reality show, like financed or like heard by Matt Damon and Ben Affleck. So they make a contest and they choose a filmmaker, and it's a documentary about how this filmmaker does his first feature film.
Right. Okay.
So they choose this guy that was like they had trouble choosing this guy because it was like he seems a little too much of an auteur. Like it seems like this guy is going to be a problem, but his vision is he's a genius. So we should keep like the executives were like, we should really like choose him anyway and see what happens. So during the course of the reality show, you see him like being like not hearing about notes of the script, like not caring about the budget, like not hearing, like he wanted to shoot on film on a low budget on like film stock for a for a low budget indie film, and that doesn't make sense. So and in the end, like Ben Affleck put of his own money to buy him the film stock, like very like so he was very spoiled, and every time the producers of the executive were talking about him, he was like, yeah, he's very combative, he's very difficult to work with, but he's such a genius. Like I really like that, I really respect that.
Right.
So then you see that, and it's like I wonder, like so of course that's not not always, but you do see like a higher tolerance and a higher like appreciation for male white filmmakers when they defend their vision, in contrast to someone like me. But not to say I'm a genius, like I will never say that. but yeah, so I think that makes you think, like,
yeah.
But so the lesson that I will take from all of that is like, I guess I have to have that in mind. Like, I can't do the same thing these other directors do. Like, I have to find like workarounds around it. Like, maybe I have to explain my ideas softer, or like sometimes like some things like that, you know? Like,
yeah, I do hear what you're saying, and I obviously you know, it's not my place to really, you know, sort of give you advice on that, but I do feel like across the board, I think what's so important is to find people you can trust, and people that you can work with, that you trust, and even though I think work is the wrong word, but like people that you can collaborate with, that you can trust. And I think special things happen when people can trust one another. And it's not to say that it's all fun and there's no conflict, and there's no like challenging one another, and there's no struggles. But I think you need to be able to look each other in the eye and know that you're getting criticism for the right reasons, and also that sometimes you're getting positive feedback where it's really like merited and useful to you as well. Because I'd hate to see someone like you who's so very articulate and passionate and clear in their vision start to feel like they need to water that down. You know what I mean? Like I feel like
maybe not water down the vision or what we want to achieve, but I have seen, like, with talking with female directors and female producers, that they do have to find workarounds, like
I'm sure. I'm absolutely sure. Of course. I mean, yeah. I'm absolutely sure. Of course. I mean, you know, and obviously, yeah, this whole thing about like white male privilege. Obviously, I don't think you can pretend, like someone in my position, you can't pretend that you haven't benefited from it at some point. Of course, there are times when it must have been the case.
Yeah, I think that like there are things that it's difficult to change. Like, if I get like excited about something I want to explain, like a part of the story or something, like I start talking a bit faster or maybe louder, or
totally,
and I think that I have never thought that could be seen as something bad, but I guess it's difficult to see that. Oh, maybe like it's very weird. It's like, oh, should I be emotionless to show art? Like, it's very. I've seen other creatives talk about this, like being passionate can be a bad thing in a room.
No. Oh, well, yeah, I get it. Like, yes, okay, from the political point of view and like the sales point of view, I totally get it. But I do think that's and again, we come back to systems, right? There's different systems, right? Like, because I think that like in France as well, there's different ways of presenting projects and different like understanding of artistic passion and stuff like that. And in North America, it's different. And, you know, but I can only talk from my personal point of view, but like, I know that like, I've been so lucky with the colleagues that I have, and that I can trust people. And I remember in France, my team was built up of majority of women, and there was a couple of guys as well, but the majority was women, and they were incredibly generous with their feedback and I would say constructive criticism. So at times they were like, you know, we feel like the meeting is going too long because you're talking too much, and we need to get to the point, and And I feel like they made me a better manager. Also, I remember the one time there was one of my colleagues that said to me, you know, she felt like she'd hit the glass ceiling, and she just was really annoyed with me because I was in her way.
Oh.
And she wanted my job. And I said to her, well, look, I can't give you my job right now because I'm still using it. You know what I mean? And so But I said to her, what I'm hearing from you is you want autonomy, you want freedom, right? I get it, and you're qualified to do it. So I said, how about we find you your own production that you can like run as like a line producer or produce it for the studio. And then when I either get fired or leave, then you're in the perfect position to take my job.
Yeah, that's great. That's a solution.
And even now, like in my current position, like I rely heavily on a colleague of mine, Chantal Ling. I rely heavily on her. She gives me a huge amount of feedback all the time. Like I feel like we have a clear back and forth. And so like after almost every meeting, I'm like, how did it go? Was that okay? How do you feel? And we give each other feedback, and for me, that's part of making a safe place, right?
Yeah, I think that's something that's definitely something to reach to
yeah, to strive for. I think
to strive for. Yeah,
I totally agree with you. I totally agree.
And I think that I do reject not doing was like being very fearful. Like when I was in development, I did like when you're new to a system, when you're new to an unknown place, there's a lot of fear of like screwing up.
Oh, totally. Yeah, totally.
So then you don't speak up. So that kind of feedback, the kind of honesty and openness about like, okay, so how did I do? Or like, oh, I think that maybe you could do better in this or that or that. Like there's a fear of communicating the stuff. So I did was a very like I will be very fearful to say anything sometimes because it was like, like oh, this doesn't seem right. Like I should ask like if this went good or not, but maybe I shouldn't ask. Like,
but that's really intimidating to say that though, right? To put yourself out there. I mean, I know exactly how you feel, and like to be the one that says, "Excuse me, can I have some feedback?"
Yeah, but if the system is set up that way, like where it is expected to talk about how things went or like how things are going, then that nervousness goes away a little bit, I guess, right? Like it starts to be just part of the process, like it's not personal or
yeah, exactly. And I think also when you do make mistakes, it become on either side. Like for me as a manager, or like because now like I'm not directing or anything like now at all. I'm just managing other people, and like my ability as a draft person is just there to explain a thing, right? So it's a pragmatic, like I'll try and explain a thing. But I think like having that situation where you can put people at ease, and then you can start to earn their trust. Because I think as a manager and as an executive, you have to earn the creative's trust. You can't expect to be given it.
It's difficult.
But it's funny because that's become my main focus, is improving my communication skills and improving my skills as a manager, and to try and like elevate people rather than sort of like get them to do something for me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I wonder how did you were able to achieve that, because like since you started as an artist, like how did you learn those skills? Like were you already very good at them, or when you started transitioning to a more like executive career, you started to notice that you lacked those things and started to work on them? Or
I think when you hit rock bottom, like when you hit like a rock bottom where you're like failing miserably, it's like you either give up or you pick yourself up and you look for the ways to get better, right? And yeah, I mean, and for me, when I first went from maker to manager kind of thing, it was just terrible. And it's funny because I've spoken to a few people about this, like friends of mine in the industry, and I'd like to do a specific discussion just around that, because it was so traumatic, and so I still have like emotional kind of scars from it, because it was just awful. And I remember hiding in the bathroom some mornings. I was so scared of going into the office. I'd like go into the bathroom and cry and just be like, oh my God, this is so awful. And then slowly I got to a place where I became more confident, you know, but I think it's like, but I had some horrible moments, like, but I did, the only thing I could do was follow my instinct, and because no one was there to help me learn, you know, and that's what I found really difficult. No, I didn't feel like anyone had my interests at heart. No one was giving me a kind of a sort of any guidance, and it was, yeah. And then, like you, I started to see mentors, and I saw people elsewhere, and then, like you, I was curious enough to go and, like, I literally went to meet them. I would knock on doors and be like, hi, hello, can we have a conversation? And then, thanks to like folks at a company in London called Us Two, I discovered things like stand-ups and like sessions that were made to give feedback, and like facilitation techniques, and things that led to what I ultimately understood to be like Scrum and Agile, and like design sprint techniques. Like that whole industry is built around communication techniques. So I started to learn that stuff, and I was like, oh my God, I didn't even know this existed.
Yeah, I mean, that's an incredible thing. Like, it's something that you can learn. Like, there's theory about it, there's books about it, there's courses, teachers for it. And I think that maybe that's something that studios or channels or like companies in general could do. That is like, when an artist comes from when an artist transitions to a more like managerial directing position, they should get some of that training.
I totally agree. Yeah, I totally agree. And I feel like it's part of my job to help artists transition and help to elevate them, and, you know, and some are more or less successful at that. And I think then, if you can apply a great deal of empathy and understanding for what they're struggling with, then you can build a team around them that compensates for what they lack. But I do think that it's also partly the artist's responsibility to acknowledge what they lack. And I think that's the hardest thing for all of us to acknowledge, is what we lack. And just well, actually, I don't like this. You know, I don't like this part of me. I'm not good at this. You know, and then just, you know, complete that with people that are good at that, and then you're able to continue with what you're doing.
Yeah, no, I think it definitely can be done. I think that I told you this like a couple of years ago, but I was very bad at public speaking.
Yes, I remember. Yes.
Like, and I thought that I could never teach. But the thing that happened was that a few years ago, I was a teacher at various universities in Chile. And one time I got back my professor evaluation, like, from my students.
Yeah.
And a couple of them said, like, she seems very nervous when she's teaching. She seems like she doesn't want to be there. She seems that she doesn't like what she's talking about.
Wow.
And I was like, well, this is a problem. Like, I love animation more than anything. Like that's the thing that I love and I get excited about. And if my students are getting like the opposite vibe from me, then that's awful. So I thought, okay, and like the next day, like I suffered. I mean, I suffered a little bit about the evaluation. I was like, why? Like,
of course. Yeah.
But then the next day I was searching for like public speaking classes in Santiago, in my city, and I found one, and I took it, and it was very uncomfortable because it's like theater classes. They try to, like, you have to breathe and you have to massage people sometimes, and I hate that. But everything that it's like theater exercise, I suffer through the whole thing. But when we had to practice and talk about a theme or do a presentation in this course, like, the teachers will tell me, like, you actually do it very good, but you get nervous because you feel that you shouldn't be there. Like, you can tell that that's why you get nervous. And I was like, oh, right, like I do get like, oh, why am I here doing this? Like when I was teaching, it was like, oh, sure, am I the right person to be teaching this? So when I was able to acknowledge that and see that, then I was able to, even if it's like tricking myself, like, no, yeah, sure, absolutely, I should be here teaching this or like doing this talk. It was easier. And so after a lot of practice, after a lot of classes, I was able to teach, and then in every market, people would tell me like, "Oh, you're so good at teaching." And for me, it was like, "Oh, really? Like, so I'm not sweating anymore? Like, I'm not like."
So I think that the big takeaways from me, like, is that you just have this kind of like the tenacity to never give up, to keep getting out when life knocks you down. The ability, the self-awareness to acknowledge that you have flaws and there are things to be like worked on, so you're able to be vulnerable yet accountable at the same time. That's a very, very special skill, I think. And then that's all wrapped up in a really passionate, creative package, like someone who's got something to say like that. Like I think that also, it's not always the case. Like you can have a very talented craftsperson, like an expert in their field, who's good at a craft or a skill or an expertise, but they're not a creative thinker, and they don't have a universe inside them that they're trying to express, right? Whereas I think you do, and it's incredible, and it's so nice to talk to you again. Like it's just fantastic.
No, thank you. No, it's really good to. It was a great conversation, and it's great because to talk with you, because you also have like these both sides of being an artist and being like a manager, and I guess like being a director or being in a leadership position in animation, where as a showrunner or as a director, like you also have to be that kind of people. So and it's not something you can talk with a lot of people because they don't have that profile. Yes. So yeah, it's very illuminating to talk with you also.
Oh, thank you. It's a real pleasure. I think we should do a 2-part to this. We should do another one because there's so many things I wanted to talk to you about. But I think we should cut it short there, because I think otherwise it's going to go on for like 2 hours. But like I really appreciate your time, and all I can say is keep doing what you're doing. It's like super inspirational for me, and I'm going to share it with the studio at Mercury as well. I would like everyone to sort of hear your story. I think it's going to be inspirational for a lot of young women in the studio and potential directors and people that haven't quite found that courage to step up and say, hey, what about me? So thank you for inspiring another generation of women. Like I think it's fantastic.
Hopefully, yeah. Well, thank you so much.
Okay, well, let's talk again soon. You take care of yourself, okay?
Yeah, you too.